Good afternoon, everyone. Hydraulic coaxing. Sounds like we've coined a new term. It's going to be very expensive to rewrite all those technical journals, but I kind of like it a little better than fracking with a K. I also would like to thank Secretary Schultz for his leadership and also acknowledge the governor of this great state, Governor Hickenlooper. He truly is a problem solver. He's been a great facilitator in terms of bringing the different stakeholders together and really solving the problem. And that's very, very unique in today's political arena. So thanks to the governor for everything that he does. I'd also like to thank Jay Precourt, the Precourt Institute, Stanford University, and the Vail Valley Foundation for hosting this forum. It truly is a unique and successful forum that is a convergence of a wide spectrum of energy stakeholders that are here with one objective, and that's to get the facts out and to really help solve our future energy needs. So today I'd like to spend a few minutes with you looking at the evolving unconventional energy landscape and how it is changing the energy picture both here in Colorado and around the world. And this is something that has been very centric to my career for several years and something that I'm very passionate about. I work for Halliburton. I'm sure many of you have heard about us. We are a leading energy services company with 77,000 employees, representing over 140 nationalities in more than 80 countries. 31,000 of those employees are here in North America, with 2,000 right here in Colorado. As a service company, we do not produce or sell the oil and gas, but we do provide the services that help get the oil and gas out of the ground. We touch almost every aspect of the operation that goes on at the well site, from drilling to completing the well. Now, most of the technology today has been developed on the service company side. Last year alone, Halliburton spent over $500 million on research and development. And this is important because technology is the key to unlocking the unconventional resources. So let's begin at looking at our global reserves. In the last decade, reserves of oil and gas have gone up dramatically. Remember, it was just a few years ago, as Tom was saying, that we were talking about peak oil and that those reserves were in an irreversible decline. So globally, we've seen a 21% increase in natural gas reserves and a 26% increase in oil. And this is especially true with respect to the reserves in the U.S., with over 90% of the drilling activity occurring on private lands over the last 10 years. Gas reserves are up 60% in the last decade, and oil reserves were up 29% just in the last 2 years. So where is this growth coming from? It's coming from unconventional resources. As you can see on the map, this country is blessed with unconventional reserves. In the last 5 years, we've seen an increase of 700% in shale gas production and 600% in tight oil production. This dramatic impact is driving the U.S. toward energy self-sufficiency. But it's not only about self-sufficiency. Let's look at the impact to our economy. Unconventionals are having a transformational impact on the broad range of sectors, obviously oil and gas, but the natural gas is a feedstock for the petrochemical industry, for metals processing, and for all types of manufacturing. The U.S. is once again becoming a powerhouse in manufacturing. Over 10 million jobs have been created because of the recent oil and gas renaissance. I'd hate to see where our unemployment numbers would be today without the jobs that are being created in the domestic energy arena. Just next year, the U.S. will become the largest oil producer, surpassing Saudi Arabia and Russia. And by 2020, we will have the capacity to be a net natural gas exporter. As I've said in the beginning, unconventional energy is transforming the U.S. economy. And right here in Colorado, Proven reserves have grown at an astounding rate. In 10 years, gas reserves are up 98%, and oil reserves by 116%. Now, Colorado is already a major producer, so these increases are truly staggering. So what does this mean? It means many things, and they're all good. First, it's jobs and job growth. Over 110,000 high-paying jobs have been created by the energy industry here in Colorado. At Halliburton, we have 2,000 highly skilled, highly compensated employees. We paid over $150 million in salaries last year, and we plan to hire another 800 to 1,000 employees this year in Colorado. And energy means tax revenues for the state. From the energy production, jobs, sales, and all the small businesses that support it. In total, the oil and gas industry contributed $1.6 billion in revenues to state and local governments, school districts, and special districts. What's proven is that abundant, affordable energy means economic growth here in Colorado and around the world. It's really that simple. Energy is the basis of a modern economy. So what's changed? How did the world go from declining reserves to growing reserves? You know, did we discover huge new pools of oil and gas? Well, the simple answer is no. These are out of reservoirs that we already knew about. We just didn't know how to get them out of the ground economically. These are called unconventional reservoirs because they could not be produced with conventional technology. In fact, until recently, we would drill through the unconventional reservoir to get to the targeted conventional reserves. So what is an unconventional reservoir? Basically, it's any type of tight, low permeability formation. This means the gas and oil will not naturally flow into the wellbore economically. That's why these reserves were known but not developed. Conventional technologies were not adequate. Now, there are several types of unconventional reservoirs, but for us, the most important one is shale. So let's take a quick look at the technologies that have enabled the shale development. The first and most important is seismic. Seismic has existed in the oil field for years, but the change from 2D to 3D has been crucial. 2D seismic is like an X-ray. It's a two-dimensional image. It's very useful, but it leaves out a lot of information. On the other hand, 3D seismic is like an MRI. It yields a three-dimensional picture of the reservoir that'll give us more precise knowledge, enable more precise well placement. Now, many medical procedures today would not be possible without MRI technology, and in the same way, many reservoirs today could not be developed without the advent of 3D seismic. With 3D, a complex reservoir can be visualized, studied, and explored at a much lower economic risk. Now, this is especially important in shale because shale is tricky. The formation is not the same throughout. It can change dramatically just over the course of a few feet. So accurate 3D images of the formation are essential for planning these expensive and complex wells. The next important technology is how we drill the wells. A traditional vertical well is drilled straight down through the producing zone, and the wellbore is in contact with the producing rock only when it passes through it. A decade ago, more than 85% of the wells in the U.S. were drilled vertically. Today, horizontal drilling represents approximately 70% of the wells drilled in North America. We drill to the reservoir, then turn horizontally and continue to drill into the source rock. The whole lateral section, which can be miles long, is in contact with the reservoir. More reservoir contact means more production. For example, in North Dakota, you've heard everyone discussing the Bakken today. A horizontal well completion in the Bakken will produce over 10 times that of the production of a corresponding vertical well. So if you look at the different technologies, one could argue that precise horizontal drilling is probably the single most important technological breakthrough that has made unconventional development possible. Without this process, producing from shale formations simply would not be economic. Now, after we've drilled the lateral, the completion equipment is installed into the well. And this allows us to selectively open up the intervals along the well bore to maximize the production. Now, let me illustrate to you why hydraulic fracturing is required to develop our abundant unconventional resources. This is a methane molecule. Methane is the chief component of natural gas. Now imagine that this section of rock represents 30 feet. It takes 17 seconds for a methane molecule to move through 30 feet of a conventional formation. To put that in perspective, it takes the same molecule 2.5 years to go through limestone. And with shale, it can take 300,000 years for a methane molecule to travel the same distance. So that's why we have to fracture the rock. It allows the gas to move to the wellbore so that we can effectively produce it. Now let's talk more about hydraulic fracturing or hydraulic coaxing, a topic I'm sure that everyone is very interested in. Now I've spent close to 40 years specializing in this field. Hydraulic fracturing is not a new technology, as Mr. Suttle said earlier. It's been used for more than 60 years. It's proven and it's safe. In fact, Halliburton performed the first frac job back in the late 1940s in western Oklahoma. And today we are the largest pumping company in the world, and by far the largest in North America. We're very proud of this technology, and we're proud of the role that it's playing in the unconventional development. So what is hydraulic fracturing? In simple terms, it's the process of pumping water and sand at high pressure into underground oil and gas reservoirs. The hydraulic pressure causes the formation rock to crack or fracture, providing channels for the oil and gas to flow to the wellbore. In a long horizontal, such as the Niobrara Formation in the DJ Basin north of Denver, the material that we pump is more than 99% water and sand. Now, occasionally we will use a resin-coated or ceramic substitute where a stronger or more uniform proppant is required. On a typical shale well, we will pump a treatment of 1 to 5 million gallons of fluid, and it'll take anywhere from 2 to 5 days from start to finish. The fracturing fluid, which is mostly water, carries the sand down the wellbore and into the formation. The hydraulic pressure widens the existing natural fractures in the rock. When the fracturing process is complete, we flow the water back out of the formation and we leave the sand behind. The sand props open the tiny cracks in the rock. That's why we call it proppant. And these cracks are the channels that let the oil and gas flow into the wellbore. I should make one thing clear at this point. This image makes it look like the fractures are as big as your arm. That's very misleading. In reality, the fractures are only about 1/8 of an inch or less. That's all it takes to create the channels we need to mobilize the oil or the gas. We're not blasting huge holes in the rock. We are initiating small fractures that may extend up to 100 feet from the wellbore. Now, these are the simple fundamentals of hydraulic fracturing. What is new and what has made shale development possible are the new techniques for fracturing these long horizontal sections economically. A 2-mile lateral may be subdivided into 30 or more stages. That means essentially 30 or more separate fracture designs, materials, and execution. Today, with our 24-hour operations, we can complete this process in a couple of days. 10 years ago, that was not possible. And we continue to push the technology and the efficiency. This is a picture of a dual fuel frac job in northern Colorado. It shows how we work today. But this wasn't always the case. As you see here, the old way of hydraulic fracturing a well involved more equipment, it involved more people, and it took a lot longer. Now today, we are continuing to shrink our footprint and the days it takes to perform our job. We've brought the future to today. Here in Colorado, drilling days have decreased. Just a couple years ago, to drill a Niobrara horizontal well, it was anywhere from 18 to 30 days. Now we're drilling these wells in 4 to 5 days. This allows us to complete more wells, produce more energy, lower the cost of the operation to the operator and to the end user, and deliver more money in the form of taxes to the state and local governments. And this is the impact: a smaller footprint, 20% less equipment on location, less trucks on the road, 35% less people on location. It's highly automated, working smarter, safer, and more reliably. And finally, less time on location, 25% less time. We're a very resourceful industry, constantly reinventing ourselves, creating step changes in technology and process to continually lower the cost of energy development. Now, I know people are concerned about various aspects of hydraulic fracturing. That's why I've spent a little time outlining the fundamentals. I think it's great that people are interested in what we do, and we're very grateful for the chance to contribute to the public's understanding. When I was dispatched on my first frac job in 1977 in southwest Wyoming, I never dreamed that hydraulic fracturing would be page one news. But now that we're in the limelight, I'd like to walk you through a couple of the common public concerns. Okay, the first concern is that hydraulic fracturing is new, untested, and an unregulated technology. As I've mentioned, this process has been in use for more than 60 years. It's not something that was invented the day before yesterday. And since the beginning, and this is very important, over 1 million wells have been hydraulically fracked in North America. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find a natural gas well in North America that has not been hydraulically stimulated. It's not new, and it's not untested. It's standard operating procedure to create an economic well. It's got a 60-year history of refinements, improvements, and oversight. Every day begins with a safety meeting. Every action is covered by a set of written procedures. Every employee has to be certified competent in those processes before he or she is sent out on a job. And regulations didn't start the day before yesterday either. Every aspect of fracturing is closely monitored by state regulators. If we spill a cup of coffee at the rig site, it's remediated, it's written up, and it becomes part of the permanent record. Here's just a sample of the numerous local, state, and federal regulatory agencies charged with overseeing the hydraulic fracturing process. We're highly regulated, we're process-oriented, and we're focused on safety, both for our employees and for the public at large. Now, the next concern we hear is that hydraulic fracturing contaminates drinking water. Let me ask you a question. How many documented cases have there been of hydraulic fracturing contaminating drinking water? Before you answer that, remember what I just said a few minutes ago. There's been over 1 million wells hydraulically fractured in North America. The answer is exactly 0. There's no documented case in the United States of hydraulic fracturing contaminating well water. Fracking takes place more than a mile below the surface. Drinking water aquifers are generally within a few hundred feet of the surface. To reach an aquifer, the fracturing fluid would have to travel through miles of solid rock. Common sense and the laws of physics tell you this is not going to happen. Methane gas occurs naturally close to the Earth's surface, and it can be present in drinking water aquifers where there are no oil and gas operations. Regulators can test a methane's chemical signature to determine if it's naturally occurring or it is a result of oil and gas operations. Right here in the Rocky Mountains, you can go down to the Vermejo Ranch on the New Mexico border, and you can find ponds and streams that bubble with methane. It's a natural phenomenon that's been going on for thousands of years. Now, it's natural to be concerned about the safety of our drinking water, and it's true that the wellbore passes through the aquifer on its way to the producing zone. But the wellbore is made up of multiple layers of steel and cement, and it's designed and built to work over the life of the well, which can be 20, 30, or 40 years. We design cement slurries and barriers that deliver well bores that will last. The discussion and the focus should be on well bore integrity for the life of the well, and not distracted by misguided concerns over hydraulic fracturing. The next concern: hydraulic fracturing uses dangerous chemicals which are kept secret. Frac fluid is almost all water. It does contain some additives to give it the properties it needs to carry the sand, fracture the rock, and flow back out of the formation. We disclose the additives to our customers, the operators, and they disclose them to the public on the website Frac Focus, which was created with the help of state officials and the governor right here in Colorado. Frac Focus is simple for the public and industry to use, and we're very grateful for Colorado's leadership and the governor's leadership in making it happen. Today, there are over 62,000 wells that are documented on Frac Focus and available for your inspection. So the most important thing to understand is that we do disclose the contents of the frac fluids. However, we do not disclose our trade secrets, which are the exact formulas for the particular fluids. These trade secrets are important to Halliburton and to other service companies. And I'd like to add that a lot of our intellectual property is around green technology and green fluids, and we're not about to give them away to our competition. That would absolutely kill invention. We spend over $500 million a year on research and development. When you go to the grocery store and you buy any food, the contents are listed on the box, but the secrets to the mix are kept secret. So are these additives dangerous chemicals? The simple answer is no, not in the low concentrations we use. Most are found in common household products and foods like ice cream and Jell-O. For example, now we have a fluid made entirely with additives sourced from the food industry. It's called CleanStem. You may remember last year I actually took a swig of it here on this stage. The point is, there's no reason to be frightened of fracturing fluids, and we publicly disclose their contents. The next concern: hydraulic fracturing uses up all of our fresh water. Again, let me ask you a quick question. What is 5 million gallons of water used for? One shale gas well, 7 minutes in New York City, 2.5 hours of brewing in Golden, or all of the above? Well, the answer is all of the above. They all use the same amount of water. Fracking uses water, that's no question. And as I've said before, a typical unconventional well may use 1 to 5 million gallons of fluid. But not all of that is clean, drinkable water. Some is produced water, water that comes out of the oil and gas formation. In fact, in the Bakken formation, there's enough produced water to meet all of our hydraulic fracturing needs. And in the Niobrara north of Denver, we're extracting water from the deep aquifers of non-potable water, minimizing the need for taking from nature's hydraulic cycle or tributary sources. With that said, we continue to develop technologies that allow us to use less fresh water. Halliburton has introduced our CleanWave and CleanStream products, which recycle water and use ultraviolet light to kill bacteria. This saves fresh water and also minimizes the tanker trucks hauling water over the roads. In the context of overall use of fresh water, hydraulic fracturing is not a huge consumer. And the last concern: hydraulic fracturing increases pollution. The reality is that increased use of clean-burning natural gas has reduced carbon pollution to 20-year lows. This reduction is from using abundant natural gas in power generation, which has been enabled by hydraulic fracturing. And by the way, America is leading the world in carbon reduction. And our efforts go beyond this. Environmental stewardship is essential in everything we do. If you look at a well site today, you'll see a clean, well-organized operation with a small footprint. In many cases, we'll construct physical barriers to contain the sights and the sounds of the operation. We have catch basins for our trucks, so that anything that falls off that truck is contained and dealt with. We are eliminating diesel engines on our proppant handling equipment and replace them with solar power. And we're working with institutions such as CSU and Caterpillar to use different signatures of field gas to power our heavy equipment. Given its abundance and its affordability, there is no reason this country can't run on clean American natural gas. And now let's take a look at how unconventional development is spreading to the international market. The shaded areas show regions where unconventional deposits have been found around the globe. So compared to the U.S., the scale of reserves are enormous and estimated to be 10 times as large. However, despite the magnitude of unconventional reserves, their development outside the U.S. is likely to be much slower than it was here. In North America, we had a confluence of many factors which allowed quick development. For this to work internationally, there's 4 factors that need to be present. First, you need to have the rock, the geology that will deliver the reserves. Second, you need infrastructure. You have to have the takeaway capacity for the product and an established service industry. Next, you need a strong regulatory environment. And finally, economic viability. You need a market clearing price to justify the large amounts of capital needed to develop these fields. Ultimately, these plays require scale and efficiency to work. So how do these 4 elements translate around the world? This graph here illustrates the top 10 countries along their shale development curve. And as you can see, they're still in the very early stages of development. The international challenges are significant. The U.S. shale story was 3 decades in development and went through multiple stages of evolution to get to where we are today. So given the scale of capital required, many countries will need to rethink their economic model to fully develop their unconventional plays. But it is happening as these countries strive to reach their energy independence. So to wrap it up, we all are users of hydrocarbons in our everyday lives. We drive, we travel, we fly on airplanes. We turn our lights on, we heat our homes. It's essential to how we live. And any energy source has consequences in order to develop it and use it. Our job as stakeholders is to mitigate that risk. I've lived here in Colorado for over 35 years. My wife and I have raised our 2 sons here. We've hiked the mountains, we've fished the ponds and the streams, and we've skied the slopes of this beautiful state. With the evolution of unconventionals, we are developing clean, abundant, and affordable energy that takes us into the next century while protecting our environment for generations to come. So rather than vilifying hydrocarbon energy, let's have reasonable conversations about the facts, and let's work to enable responsible development. So with that, I will close. Once again, I want to thank Jay Precourt, and I would like to thank the Vail Global Energy Forum for having us here today, and thanks to each one of you for listening. Thank you.